Welcome to the Parenting Different podcast, where we share real adoption stories, have honest conversations, and give hope for the hard days. We're here to encourage parents, build understanding, and make sure that every child is seen, heard, and valued. Welcome to the Parenting Different podcast. My name is Anna Bernacki. Today we have Julie and Isaac Etter with us. I am so excited to talk to you. It's a heavy topic today that we are talking about, but I'm very thankful to have you here. Give us just a brief introduction of who you are. We'll start with you, Julie, and then we'll dive into it.
All right, I am Julie Etter. I'm obviously Isaac's, well, maybe not so obvious, but Isaac's mom. And he is our oldest of 5 children. He and our youngest son, who's about to turn 18 and just next week, are both adopted, 3 bio kids in the middle. And yeah, that's who I am.
Awesome. Isaac.
I am Isaac Etter. I am an adoptee. I'm a speaker. I'm the founder of Parenting Different and Identity. And big passion for adoption education, and have been doing this for a while now, and have mainly worked in transracial adoption. And I'm excited to chat today and kind of have a conversation with my mom and Anna. Should be interesting and fun and unique.
Unique. Oh no.
Could be pretty unique.
So I want to talk today about current events. And I think, Julie, you and I are both transracial adoptive parents. And we have had kind of our first introduction to, we knew there was racism. We knew that there were biases. We knew all of this existed. But I know we've talked before, I don't think we understood it to the level that it is until we had children of color in our home. And with current and recent events, specifically the president posting awful depiction of the Obamas as primates. And I know there's a whole argument of who posted it and how it got posted. And quite frankly, I don't really care. It got posted and it's wildly inappropriate. So right. However it got there doesn't matter. It did. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, I had such a different reaction that made me, and I've seen the brutality. I've seen the racism. I've seen it develop over the years. But this one hit different. And it took me a little bit to figure out why. And I realized he's talking about my kids. He's giving permission to the rest of the country, rest of the world, to talk to and about people like my kids in that way. And so it hurt very deeply. And I know, again, you and I have had conversations about this, but the reaction from our friends too was very eye-opening about the world that we live in. People who know that we have children of color, people who know that we have adopted, people who we thought were safe people, mm-hmm. agreed or defended it. And so just talk to me. I know that was very hard for you too. And this is a tough topic to talk about, but I think it's so necessary that as white parents and transracial adoptive parents, we need to talk about it. And we need to talk about how this affects our families.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was hard. It was very hard. I cried a lot over those few days. I remember reading my post to my husband before I clicked, to post it, and said, "Is this okay?" And couldn't even read it to him without crying. I just was very emotional about it. And I think the thing that hurts the most, I think, is, like you said, it's the people that are in our lives, that are in our community, that we do everyday life with, that excuse it, that make excuses for it, that pull from thin air. It's just all of the ways that it should be okay. The silence hurts too, I would say. The thing about social media is I want to preface this with this. I don't live in the world of who liked my post, kind of thing. I don't live in that world. But even to get, I got a text from some people that just were like, I really appreciated what you said. Even that is wonderful. But to have people who are close to you and who proclaim love for your children and either defend it or see you in pain and can't talk about it. It's hurtful, and it's just one more thing that makes you feel alone. We often say adoption is one of the loneliest roads for all parties involved. The whole triad is so lonely, and it's one of those things that just shines a light on that loneliness kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I even said, I could say, okay, say it's true. He didn't post it. That they didn't watch it all the way through, so they didn't know, like all of the excuses that have come out. Say all of that is true, but the refusal of an apology put a
Yes.
stamp of approval on it. And if I could hear we're really sorry that happened. We didn't watch it all the way through. We're in position of leadership, so we're held to a higher standard. We will do better. That's all I needed to hear. That puts us that says it's not okay. But the lack of any of that, as you said, put a stamp of approval on it from the highest seat of power in our nation. So
Well, and I think too, and I don't think people outside of our realm understand how hard as parents we work to build trust with our kids, especially if they come to us at an older age. Like mine came much older. Mine already had pre-existing bias against white people. White people were rude. They thought they were better. They couldn't take care of you. They didn't. My one daughter still laughs. She's like, "You can actually cook. You season your food." Like, yes. I mean, little we can laugh at that, but those are pre-existing biases that they have too coming into that relationship. And so we are having to every single day break down those walls and build that trust that we are not there to take advantage of them. We are not there to try and turn them white. We are not there to do whatever the narrative is. We just love them because they're our kids. And so outside of that, I don't think people realize how much we are facing that in our home every single day.
right, yes,
So to have this then happen and have it not be either spoken out against or condoned, or like you said, silence is complicity. It just is. And even the people who messaged me privately and said, "I'm so sorry for your family and what you're going through," post it publicly. Say it publicly. Like I have teenagers that can see online. They can see what you're posting. Say that publicly. Don't A private message is great, but that doesn't do anything to the culture around us.
right. It doesn't bring any healing, but yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. Right. So, Isaac, you are the child that grew up in a transracial home with white parents. This type of situation, you see this happening. What are your gut reactions and what are you wanting or would hope that your parents would do in response to a situation like this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually agree with a lot of stuff my mom said about the apology part, because I think that my general instinct was not really surprise. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously, it's a little bit
Which is
shocking.
also sad.
Yeah, like, I did definitely think that it was like a joke at first. Like, I thought that it was not real at first. And so, I mean, even the fact that it was real was not extremely surprising, which I think is kind of like maybe, its own message in and of itself. Um, I do also think that, I was surprised really more so at the commentary about it. I think the commentary about it was really surprising, seeing people who were not bothered by this at all, and people and this to me a surprising amount of people that were. To be honest, I felt like when I saw it, when I saw the outrage over it, I was actually surprised at who some of the people were that were upset about it. So there was almost like this mix of, wow, can't believe some of these people that I grew up with that have never said anything before are upset about it. And then also kind of a shock that there was any way to make it right, if that makes sense. I think we've seen a lot of stuff happen in our country in the last couple of months. But I think that, even any any negative animal depiction of a former president posted by a president to me seems like it would not be respectable. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Sure.
just
Yeah.
on a base level, it was very hard for me to understand how, if any president posted this, how it would not be right. And then also thinking about the racial elements of the animals that they were posted on kind of added that extra layer as well.
Right.
Um, and so to me, I think there was a lot of general surprise over how everything was playing out.
Mhm.
I
That
think
you
to how
oh,
yeah,
sorry,
go
go.
ahead.
I thought you were finished. Go ahead.
Well, all I was gonna say is just the second half of the question of like how parents react. I mean, I appreciated what my parents shared about it, and I was even surprised by that. Not to say that they wouldn't share things or have never talked up in the past, but I think that for a lot of transracial adoptees, anytime we see people in our community speak out, it does mean something. It is almost surprising, even if they've done it before. And so I think that probably like many transracial adoptees who saw their parents share stuff about it, there was surprise and healing in that. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think it is on transracial parents to at least address that what happened is not okay, especially from a racial standpoint in the depiction that was chosen, right? We know that any kind of disrespect like that from a president should not be respectable, but really when you think about the fact that they used gorillas and the whole racial connotation behind it, I think it is important that transracial parents understand how to talk about this being wrong and stand up against anybody who would dismiss it in front of their children. Because what if it is somebody at school depicting their children like this the next week, thinking that it's funny because the president did it and their parents think it's funny that the president did it? And so I think that the downward effect is what a lot of transracial parents seem to continually actually miss, which is that when they dismiss racial behaviors, they don't understand that like their children go to school with kids whose parents are probably dismissing racial behavior, which
Right.
means what happens when their kid there's a poster on their locker of them depicted as an ape? Is that also still dismissible? Is it still a joke? Is it still, okay if it's then their child the next week because the kids who went to their schools parents thought it was funny, and so now they're doing it to the black kids at their school, and so I think that that's what a lot of transracial parents miss in these instances. Maybe you don't want to make a post, maybe you don't want to do this or that, but to dismiss it and to not have the conversation and to explain to your children that it's wrong, I think sets them up for failure, because we know kids, just like they're not an adult might know not to do that at their workplace, but
Right.
a
Right.
child does not know not to do that at middle school, high school, grammar school, and kids know how to use the internet pretty well nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And especially with something like this where it's so widely shared and that it was very polarizing. There was a ton of outrage, which there should be. Like
Right.
there absolutely should be. And I'm very thankful that there was that outrage. But then there was also the other side. And I think there was no in between on this one. It was either or. And so having those conversations with your kids, again, you like you said, don't need to make a post, but age appropriate. Obviously, if you have young kids, you're not having this entire conversation. However, with older kids, I mean, I sat my oldest down and I said, "Look, we're going to have a conversation about this." Somehow she hadn't even seen it. So, I don't know how. But we had a conversation about it and I mean, you could tell she was visibly hurt that she lives in a world where this is even happening. And she shouldn't. Like, that is so, it's ridiculous that this is even happening. It's also, to what you said, Isaac, not surprising. And that in and of itself is a tragedy. Because honestly, no, I wasn't surprised either. I'm not shocked by it. I'm disgusted, but not shocked. And that is very, very telling of the world we live in too.
Yeah. The only surprising part to me is that you think that someone in that position knows better or the people around him know better. and and so that was the only surprising part to me is like how did it get to that point kind of thing. And then that it stayed up for 12 or 13 hours. Like
Right.
that was the only surprising part to me. Yeah.
It definitely shows, it's like an inside view into the atmosphere in the White House.
Yeah.
Like if you know, it's very telling, in kind of an inside window into what that atmosphere is and who the president is surrounded by.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's telling, which is this is something that's a change that has happened in my lifetime because it hasn't always been this way, but that they're comfortable enough doing that that they don't think, oh, our administration's going to fall apart over this. Like it's fine to do this. That we're safe doing this because that would not have happened just a few years ago. So we've
Right.
come to the point that they felt safety in that. Isaac mentioned earlier, just the animals that were depicted, and me and my naivete. I don't know. Maybe it's not naivete. Maybe it's yeah. It's naivete. I think okay. Maybe they don't know. Maybe people don't know, and I think it is true. I grew up in an area where I knew that America has a long, dark history of depicting African Americans as apes or gorillas or monkeys or whatever. So I know what that means. But there are maybe people who didn't grow up around that. So when I received people defending it, I was like, well, it was no accident that because it was the politicians were on all kinds of different animals' faces. And it's like, well, there was no
Yeah,
accident.
but look at what the animals
Yeah,
are.
yeah. And so
Yeah.
I
It's
very
very clear.
kindly explained the history of that, and still had people just telling me that I was reading into that, kind of thing. Yeah. And even with we've had this is a conversation I put it on Facebook and it's public, so I know that Isaac has probably read it. So I can say it now. I've never had this conversation with him, but we have had kids or people say about him when we adopted him. Why do they look so much like monkeys? It could make me almost believe in evolution, kind of thing. That we have had people say that. So for
Oh my
people to
word. To
excuse
be bold
that,
enough to say that out loud?
yes. So for people to excuse that or say I'm reading into something when that and you've had your children
Yeah,
refer
my
to
kids have
it,
been called that.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it's sad to me that this is where we're at. It's just sad, it's infuriating, and I get angry at myself that I have to feel nervous about what's going to happen when I speak out publicly about these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, like, I posted about it too, and I was fully prepared to lose a lot of followers. I was like,
Mhm.
this is fine, but this affects my kids directly. And I mean, my kids didn't even know what that meant. When my one daughter, I think she was in fifth grade, sixth grade, somewhere in there, the first time she was called a monkey. And she came home and she was just like, Mom, I just didn't like it. I've been called names, but I just didn't like this one. It sat funny with her, but she didn't know what it meant. And so I had to have that hard conversation with her and be like, okay, thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
We're going to the principal over this one. That's not just whatever. Like, this is very serious. And we are going to have a conversation about it. But having to have that conversation with her of, that was extremely racist. And there's a reason why they chose that to call you. And those are conversations that we are having that probably Black families have from a very young age, right? And they're not shocked by this. They're preparing their kids much younger for these things. And it's a natural part of their conversation. It's part of their culture that they are being prepared for these things, which is tragic that this even has to be. But we have to be so aware and in tune with these things and be aware ourselves. It's not enough to say, I'm not racist. You have to be anti racist. And by being anti racist, you have to know. You have to know the slurs. You have to know the language. You have to know and have these conversations proactively, not reactively.
I think the real challenge for transracial parents is that the kind of landscape of racial things is changing a lot. Like you said, your daughter didn't even know that, which I think is a really interesting kind of cue into how like racial issues in America are even changing with the younger generation. And even just because of their access to the internet, everything is being made a joke. And I was talking about this in a training how, the King Foundation had to like basically like sue a bunch of AI companies so that they would stop making like Martin Luther King Jr. like AI videos of him like doing like working at McDonald's or like doing crazy stuff. All these things that would happen, and so we live in kind of like this really interesting, evolving world where a lot of things are actually being made pretty unserious, like because of the internet, because of younger generations, and because of also younger generations just having, I think, a different outlook on life, not really understanding the history, not living through. I think a lot of young kids nowadays are living in classrooms that even if their teacher isn't very progressive, they understand that like the teachers understand there's a politics system to their classroom. So they're not living with teachers who are racially insensitive, at least intentionally, or not without risk of being fired. So they're living in kind of like an interesting world where the racism that comes from their home is what's getting spread out into the classroom. So it's not even necessarily in their system as much the same way. And so I think what happens is kids are consuming this kind of like content that makes a joke of all of our history. And so then in these school systems, they're viewing almost all the things that have happened historically in a much lighter tone. And so I think that's also why we maybe didn't see as many like young people even know about this or understand this, or maybe even why just kind of just being on a younger side of the internet, like I just assumed it was like an AI joke at first. Like the tide of how we're even thinking about these things or how often these things are coming up is really changing. And so to me, I was like, oh, an AI video of the Obamas as apes. Just thought some kid on the internet, like I just thought some kid on the internet made it and it was circulating, right? So I didn't even think about it in like a heightened sense. Again, which shows you that there's a lot of desensitization because the internet, all these kinds of
Yeah.
things, and kids are being, again, like history is so maybe desensitized is the right word. It's so desensitized that I think the conversation actually around understanding race and racism maybe be becoming slightly more challenging because of that. Whereas I think it's not until something affects a child or something is directly said to a child, like being called, like you say, your daughter being called a monkey, that racism becomes even anything other than like this joke to a lot of young people. And I think that becomes a challenge in and of itself. Obviously, I think that's a byproduct of maybe the attempt on not on like the attempt of like making racial tension less, but I think that didn't really work the way that people maybe wanted it to. I think now there's like a really big desensitization, whatever that word is, among young people until a reality event hits them. And then I think that puts transracial parents in an interesting position because, you know, when it hits them, because they're not having the conversations, because they're not doing, because their child doesn't seem to be coming home having issues, because race seems very normalized. Until that major event happens, they're not even sitting with it the same way. And so I think events like this, I think just make me think because I had such a passive reaction to it, make me think that most racial events like this will have passive reactions, and it won't be until these kinds of instances start affecting your child and how people at school treat your child or how people in life treat your child that it will come down. I think it makes the conversation harder and less in your face for transracial parents. Whereas if this would have happened, I don't know, Trump's first term, I think there would have been a much bigger of an outrage. I think more people would have reacted bigger. Actually, I think it wouldn't have been able to be so passive. But we're very desensitized to this kind of stuff nowadays. It's very
Yeah.
normal. You go on the internet, it's very normal, which means that you know in a sense, our children are also becoming very passive about it too.
Which I do think, though, in the long run, it's just more division because
Right.
when it does happen to them, as you just said, they don't know what to do with that. And so that just sends people to their corners. It sends teenage kids to their bedrooms to grieve alone because
Yeah.
they don't
Well,
know what to do with it. Yeah.
and I think too, there is this mindset around parents, and I think I had this mindset too prior to having Black children. I had the mindset of, well, I am not racist, I am not biased, so I'm not going to talk about it and entertain it and give it fuel. However, now I understand that I have to talk about it. And again, your silence, you not bringing it up with your kids at home, like, hey, this is going around on the internet. We need to talk about this. You not bringing that up with your kids at home, as it could be a traditional family, a white family. You are not stopping it before it starts. And your silence is allowing room for that to grow, whether it's intentional on the child's part or not, whether they think it's just a funny haha joke, they heard something new, they're going to try it out, or whether it is intentional racism. Either way, if you are not having these conversations with your children, it leaves the door wide open for it to happen.
Well, and I think it's important too, Isaac, as you say, we're in the age with AI and everything. Yes, it was an AI video that someone probably created as a joke, but it's a perfect training opportunity to say, when you're in a position of leadership, it's not a joke. We don't joke this way.
Absolutely.
Kind of thing. So you
Yeah.
are right. Like the internet, social media, whatever has desensitized all I mean, I remember, this is showing my age. I remember when the little home we lived in Virginia, um, and it was the first night of your dad's in the room. I have to ask him. It was the first bombing after 9/11. So when the United States bombed in Afghanistan, and it was televised on like CNN, like 24-hour news coverage was brand new around that time. And so I remember watching it, and it was the first time I had ever seen that because we didn't have 24-hour news coverage. We didn't have people videoing that kind of thing. And I just remember crying and saying, we shouldn't be seeing this. We should not be seeing this happen. Well, now that's every day. We're so desensitized to that kind of thing now. Um, and and we need to be able to train our children that while we may be desensitized to things, and it's not a joke, and so I think even more as parents, we need to be training our kids in those ways. And when your president's doing it, that makes it a really hard training.
Yeah.
Training to do,
I
yeah.
think maybe that's a good direction to go here too. It's just like, how would you introduce that conversation in the home? Because I think we talk about transracial family. A lot of transracial families have white and black kids in them. So a lot of
Right.
transracial families are not just like one. So when you think about introducing this conversation and addressing something like this, for you guys, how are you guys thinking about addressing this conversation?
About the appropriateness, or
Yeah, so like let's just say, I think there could be people listening that are probably like, maybe this happened. So this happened. I don't know. Time this comes out will probably be 3 weeks, right? And so there are probably people who maybe have not even said anything about it, or have not known what to say. They're just talking with their husband or wife or whatever partner, and they are not sure how to go about it. What as the parents kind of navigating this, where would you have them start?
Are you referring to like an all white family or a transracial family?
Transracial family, just to kind of give context to you, transracial family, mixed transracial.
I think I am, I say it over and over again, age appropriate honesty. And I think that we are not protecting our kids by not equipping them. So I am a big advocate when they're young. Hey, if anyone calls you names, any names, let's talk about it. Come tell me about it and we'll talk about it. There's some people who really don't like other people based on their skin color, and that's very wrong. And your skin is beautiful, and I always want you to feel beautiful. If anybody ever makes you feel any different, come to me. I want to hear about it. I want to talk to you about that. And then check in with them. Hey, how's it going? Have you ever had anything said to you? And I'm thinking, like, this is elementary age conversations, right? Like, has anybody ever said anything to you about your skin other than it being beautiful or your hair or whatever? And I mean, I do this with Raya. She's 7. And I have these conversations with her of, hey, and it's just like before bed, we do our little one-on-one time and how was school today? And it's not every day. It's not, I don't, sometimes it depends on the environment of the world, but it's not even once a month necessarily. But I do make sure that I have a habit of asking and opening the conversation so that if something did happen, she doesn't feel shame coming to me.
Right. She knows
And it's just a normal conversation that we have. We talk about these things in our home. So and then obviously my oldest, she's 18. That's a very different conversation. I'm going to show her the post because she didn't see it. I'm going to show it to her and we're going to have a conversation. Like, how does this make you feel? I am so sorry that you live in a world that this even exists. This should not exist, and really speak out against it. And if you see people, especially people we know online, condoning this or thinking that this is funny, come and talk to me about it. I want to know because maybe I've missed it. Or if any of your friends think that this is funny, they're probably not a good friend to have in your life that puts you in danger or could potentially put you in danger. And so those are the kind of conversations that I'm having with teenagers.
Yeah.
I don't know. How would you approach it?
Let's go a level deeper here. I want to keep going, and maybe, Mom, this is a good place for you to start because I think you're unlike, not, and again, no shade. Me and my mom have our own long story, but my mom started this later. Anna's kind of more at the beginning. Me and my mom started this kind of later in our journey, right? And
Yeah.
so let's think geared to the parent who, and probably would be most helpful for a parent who they haven't even started this conversation yet. Let's just say that they have an elementary school kid, somewhere from 6 to 10, and they've never started the race conversation. This picture goes out, maybe their kid has seen it. They don't know exactly what they should be saying. How are you starting this
Yeah.
process?
Um,
And maybe, Mom, you can start off, and then Anna, you might have more to contribute.
and I want to come back to, so don't forget this, the home that has the white and black kids in it.
Well, yeah, let's phrase it as the home that has the white and black kids in it. You
Okay.
know what I mean?
Well, and I have more things like the teenage years about that, but I will say I do remember you being younger, and I don't remember if something happened or if it was we were getting to. It might have been when you were getting to study slavery, like in grammar school, like in elementary school, or something like that. And I was like, okay, we got to talk about this. I'm not sure that anything had stood out. Certainly, things had happened. I mean, we had the whole playing slaves when you were 5. So, so
Oh,
that's
no, I
another
feel like that's
story
a
for
wild
another day.
story here.
Another story for another day.
I have to sit all my kids and my nieces and nephews down on a couch and talk about what games we play and what games we don't play.
Oh no.
Oh, recently my niece is a wonderful lady now with kids and all. And she's like, "Does Isaac share that story?" I was like, "Yep." It's like, "Oh no."
I don't know that I've ever. I think you've shared it.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I don't know that I've ever said.
But anyway, I was like crying. I'm laughing so hard. Um, but anyway, so we just originally just kind of sat you down with factual, like, this is what America's history has been between white and black people, and just like telling you the factual history behind slavery. And unfortunately, we didn't call it the Jim Crow era or anything like that, but just like, unfortunately, those thoughts lasted, and these things can still happen today. So just factually, and then of course, if you have questions, if people ever say anything to you, after that initial factual talk when you were young in elementary school, like Anna, it's like, well, actually not like it. I didn't do enough of educating after that. So we had a long, empty time. So then when you became a teenager and started experiencing things or started having your own questions, like we didn't know what we were a mess. And that's what our whole story is, because we had not educated you and you didn't know what to do and we didn't know what to do. So I would say the continual education, how Anna speaks to constantly letting her young children know that it's safe to come to them with questions or with times that they felt like they've been bullied or racism has happened, bringing that into your home, making sure your kids know, because I think you did not know that was safe. We didn't talk about it enough. And so you didn't know it was safe. So you did a lot of grieving alone. And I think that that would be one thing if we could go back that we would do differently. I think to answer the having both kids, so we've got 3 white kids and so 4 boys total, 1 girl. And all 4 of those boys are just your stereotypical brothers who make fun of each other and just pile on, make fun. Their poor sister they were just brutal to her, kind of thing. And it's love. They have lovely relationships. Like they are close and they've got each other's backs. But we have, especially with one of our sons, have had to have times where we're like, you cross the line, that you cross the line. So I was very um that because my mama bear comes out whether it's someone from outside our home or someone from inside our home that's causing issues this way. And so I remember saying to one of our kids at one point, I wouldn't allow anyone else to bully my kids, or I wouldn't allow anyone else to be racist against my kids, and I'm not going to let you do it either. That's my child that you're going after, kind of thing. And so that line was very clear in our home. They're all adults now, and they joke with each other, and Isaac can give it just as good as he can take it about a myriad of things. I'm not even really talking race issues now, but still, as adults, when we get together, I find myself often being like, "Stop! Why would you say that?" Kind of thing. But I think Isaac can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we built a very fine line between regular sibling rivalry or sibling joking around and then what was crossing the line. It wasn't perfect, but kids were held accountable when they crossed that line. And I will say, I always cry at some point when sorry. I think my kids have each other's backs now. You've got 5 kids, you've got everyone's worldviews are different, political slants are different, like everything. But when push comes to shove, they all have each other's backs. And I think holding everyone accountable during that time was uh, part of that. Yeah.
I think the whole family learns, right? You know what I mean? It's
Uh-huh.
not just it's not just one child has to go through all the conversations and all the understanding. It's the whole family kind of gets an understanding, and then I think that's how you create that kind of having each other's back, right? I
Hmm.
think that's how your siblings, your child's siblings, can also have their back at school or as adults or whatever the case may be when these instances might pop up in their personal life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the reality is, in the world we live in, it will. It
Mm.
will.
Yeah. And I feel like the culture of where we're at right now, it's likely going to get worse before it gets better. That's what's kind of how I'm seeing things spiral right now.
I think for me, that one thing that I really struggle with in looking at the world we live in, these events, I see my kids in the victims. And that is so hard. Like, I see girls being misunderstood or not taken seriously. I see boys walking down the road with a hoodie on. And I mean, we even had a little 5-year-old runaway incident last week, and the cops brought him back. And I thought, wow, in 10 years, what would that look like? Because he'll be a big black boy then. And he's tall. He's going to be large. Like he just is. And so what would that look like in 10 years from now even if he's walking down the street?
Right.
How would that conversation go? What would their reaction to him be? And that hurts my heart because they're my babies.
You're
And
right.
I can't fathom anyone, and I know that it exists, but I can't fathom ever loving them less just because of their skin color. Like, that is the part that blows my mind. Like, how are we how can you justify that in your mind at all, on any level? I just don't understand it. These are children, and that's somebody's baby, and that's somebody's daughter, that's somebody's mother, father. Like, these are brother, sister, like, these are loved human beings.
Well, I think that the justification that they use in this is, I don't love anyone less. I don't see anyone less. But when what they don't understand is that when they make jokes or they believe in stereotypes and act upon those stereotypes, they're not seeing people in the image of God. That God created them in the image of God, and they're not holding that respect for them when they do that. Um, and or when they're colorblind. We adopted Isaac at the end of the colorblind era, kind of thing. And so that's even how we were counseled with some of our social workers. And I have come to the understanding that saying I don't see color means I'm not celebrating who God created them to be. And so there's just a blindness there. I have had the unique experience. I don't share this in our story. Some of you have probably heard me share this before. But as Isaac was exiting his teenage years, Zachary was entering his teenage years. So I had the experience close together there of parenting a black teenage boy and a white teenage boy. And I was able to see that there were conversations I had to have with Isaac that I didn't have to have with Zachary, or there were fears that I had for Isaac that I didn't have for Zachary. And excuse me for using a trigger word here, but our great mentor who walked us through some of this taught us this, that everyone lives with privilege. Everyone has some sort of privilege. And the privilege for a white teenage boy is that he doesn't have to live in fear of if he wears a hoodie, or he doesn't have to live in fear of having a baseball cap on at night. And I didn't understand that, and argued way too much with Isaac about that until I started raising a white teenage son and realized I didn't, that there was a privilege in my parenting, that there was a level of anxiety I didn't have about Zachary that I had about Isaac. And
Yeah.
that was part of when some of the veil was lifted for me. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think that's all really powerful stuff. And I think it's also extremely helpful for parents to kind of start thinking, because they'll live this. One thing that I thought about, and might be kind of a good kind of direction here as we start to think towards the end of this episode, is that I think that you shared that, we see our children and all the victims. And I think that it's really important that we find ways to see our children in other ways other than the victims, because it's the counter effect of this conversation is that we also have to set up our children for believing that their lives can be fruitful and successful in spite of these things, right? And so I think that the challenge that transracial parents, and the dynamic that is really hard for them, is to balance, how do I have conversations about race if I'm only having them in a negative framework, right? And
Fair.
so I think that one of the things that we also can encourage parents is that, though the negative moments may trigger these things, one of the benefits of having diverse community is that you're also in a lot of celebrations that are multicultural, right? You're also celebrating the new baby that was born, and the new person that got a new job, the new pastor of your church, maybe, who maybe is a black man. You're also seeing, there's obviously celebrity icons that we can look at. Simone Biles was, I remember the celebrations for her getting gold among, I was living in Atlanta at the time, at least one of the times. And so also trying to find these creative ways to make sure that we're also showing our kids themselves in the positive, right? That is part of, I think, racial mirrors. It's also part of having conversations about race. The reason that we can say this is a horrible, not the only reason, one of the reasons that we can say, wow, this is such a horrible way to depict the Obamas and things, because, well, that was the celebration was that he was a black president, that in many communities that was, something to aspire to, something to look forward to. The first time people had seen a black person in that notable of a position. And so I think without the understanding or maybe the celebration of that, even though it's wrong if any black person gets depicted like that, I think we're only having conversations about the negative depictions, and we're not teaching our kids maybe to have anything other than heightened sense of sensitivity around their race versus celebration and cultural pride, and confidence in who they are. And so I think that the challenge kind of leaving this space for parents is, are you in these mixed communities? Are you in spaces where your child is seeing black people in leadership positions? Are you going to cultural events where things are happy, things are celebrated, or are you just going to protest, right? And this is a balance that transracial parents need to have as they are teaching their kids to be advocates for themselves, having these hard conversations about race that are important. But I do think that one thing that I'm at least taking more note to now is that if your kids are only having conversations about race in these moments, they might not ever understand race differently than these moments. So you can't just be having the conversation when you're about to go to a protest or when something happens. You also have to be having it in the joy. You have to be having it. You have to be having it in the regular momentum. They have to be seeing people that aren't victims in their daily life that are black, because the thing that we want to send is that there is, they are valuable people, that they are, loved people, that they should not be treated differently because of their race. But if we only show them examples of people treating them differently because of their race, then we're maybe sending the counter message.
Mm.
And so I think that the next challenge, and maybe some stuff that we'll work on and think about and try to bring, is like, how can we mix these? And I will say that the best way and probably the most impactful way to mix this is to be in community. Be in community with people that look like your child. They should live and breathe with adult examples of themselves that are in leadership positions, because those people are not, you know, victims. Those people are people that they can look at and say, look, they went to college or they worked hard, they got a job, they're leading. And these are ways in which we, I think, also do anti-racist work, which is by showing the living examples of the fact that that's not the truth. The living examples that the racist ideology is not the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
think
That's good.
that's so good and such a good reminder because, I mean, for our family, we really try and support Black owned businesses, right? We want our kids to see business owners and entrepreneurs and successful Black family owned businesses that are functioning as a family. Our CPA is a Black family run business and we love them. We walk in and they know us and they know our history and they dote on our kids. And so it's surrounding even just, I think sometimes it's hard to think of community because not everyone has access to a quality community where you can go to the celebrations and you can go to the events.
Right.
But even just immersing yourself in Black owned businesses and getting to know those entrepreneurs and business owners and professionals can give such a, you have those now icons, right? Like we've got this guy who has a penthouse office at the top of, it looks very very, I mean, it's a fancy office, right? And so we're walking in and we're showing our kids like this is attainable, this is possible. And so do we do everything perfectly? Absolutely not. No, we don't. But I think even you can do little things like that to set them up and show them
Yeah.
what life could be like.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We did this is a whole nother podcast, but we weren't great at that. When we first adopted Isaac, we lived in a very diverse community, went to a diverse church, and so that was easy. When we moved here, it was not organic. So unfortunately, Isaac had aged out of some of these things by this time, but with his younger brother coming up, we joined the city pool instead of the suburban pool, and we joined. He played soccer on a team that was more diverse than what Isaac had the opportunity to do. So while we couldn't move to you know, into to that area for different reasons. We sought out ways for them to see more people that way in their regular life. And I think that was beneficial for all of our kids. Or yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I don't want to speak for you, Isaac, but I would think as the child looking at that, like that effort, I mean, you can reasonably look around and be like, yeah, some of this stuff just doesn't exist here. And there's nothing that you can do about that. But when your parents are actively seeking those things out, I would think that that means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, I think again, the byproduct has been the benefit of the family. I think that's when people maybe listen to our story or watch the documentary, read the book, whatever way they're reading the story, they see a lot of our challenges and our struggles. But I think the way that the story has gone that's so beneficial is that yes, we had some hard times and hard conversations, and we learned together a lot, me and my mom. And now the byproduct has been that our whole family also got to learn as a byproduct of that. My youngest brother got to have the experiences that my mom's talking about. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's very meaningful to watch the kind of living of it, and also understand like, you know, I've got my own, I'm my own parent now. Like I'm living my own life, my own separate life, and to understand that even as I'm living my own adult life, those things are still happening as a byproduct of what they want to live, not because I'm living there. If that makes sense, this is a byproduct of the life that they're choosing to live, because maybe of these conversations, but because of these part changes, because of these awarenesses. But it's not like I just see it when I go over there. You know what I mean? It's something that's
Yeah, it's not
living
like
and
they're putting
breathing,
on a performance.
right? Exactly. It's a real. It's their real values and what they're really putting out into the world now. And they don't need me to hover. Like I don't need to remind them that racism exists, right? Which is a really big benefit that not all transracial adoptees have. And so, I think that's another big benefit. And another a whole another podcast is like this is how you, I think, have those real adult relationships, right? And my mom has a passion of talking about that, and I'm sure you guys will talk about it at other times. I think that's really how you have your adult kids really trust and believe you as they're in their own adulthood, is them seeing you still live out the values, and the understanding, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I am really thankful we had this conversation. It's a tough conversation to have, but it's necessary. And I think this will be good for so many families, especially if they're new in this space, they're newly transracial adopted, or they're starting to see the world in a different light. I think these conversations are so important and, reach out to us too, because we are always happy to have conversations about this. So thank you.
great.
Thank you.
All right.